Markets are surging. Optimism is in the air. Trump said he'll delay launching new tariffs on China, and that a trade deal could be close. But will the Chinese Communist Party keep its promises? Welcome back to China Uncensored. I'm Chris Chappell. Optimism is in the air. On Sunday, President Donald Trump made an announcement that could start to scale back the US-China trade war. Trump said, tweeted, "I will be delaying the US increase in tariffs now scheduled for March 1st. Back in early December, Trump gave China 90 days to make concessions on issues like unfair trade practices and intellectual property theft. And if no deal could be reached, the US would hit China with a new round of tariffs. Those tariffs would affect $200 billion of Chinese goods. The tariffs are currently at 10%, but would go up to 25% if no deal is reached by March 1st. Except now, Trump has extended that deadline, adding that, assuming both sides make additional progress, we will be planning a summit for President Xi and myself at Mar-a-Lago to conclude an agreement. So they're heading to Trump's Gulf estate in Florida. I mean, any excuse to get out of Washington. Or maybe it's because Florida is the best place for Xi Jinping to experience American culture. I would know. I was in Florida 2 years ago for the last meeting. Or maybe Trump just extended the trade agreement deadline while he's meeting with North Korean leader Kim Jong-Un this week. After all, the Chinese regime wouldn't want to risk the trade agreement by interfering with that. Regardless, Xi Jinping is extremely happy that Trump has agreed to extend the trade talks. I believe we have footage of his reaction. And the stock market was happy too. The Dow Jones ticked higher, and former Commerce Secretary Carlos Gutierrez struck a guardedly optimistic note.
Look, I hope this is for real. I mean, the marketplace needs it, the world economy needs it. I can't think of a better piece of news for 2019 than that the US-China trade war is beginning to tone down.
Even legendary investor Warren Buffett skipped his usual Dairy Queen breakfast to hop over to CNBC studios and weigh in on the news.
You know, negotiations are tough in something like this. This is a big deal to both countries, and to some extent you're playing a game of chicken.
No idea who was the first to blink, though, since neither Washington nor Beijing provided specific details on who made what concessions. On Friday, Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin, who's sitting right here, explained that, it's complicated.
There's hundreds of issues that we're dealing with, everything from financial services to currency to forced technology transfer to aircrafts to express shipping to different industries.
We don't have any details yet on every single one of those hundreds of issues, but according to this Bloomberg report, Chinese officials said they would buy an additional $30 billion a year of U.S. agricultural products, including soybeans, corn, and wheat. Now, according to Bloomberg sources, those extra purchases would be on top of pre-trade war levels. In 2017, before the trade war, China imported a total of $24.2 billion in American agricultural products. Last year, when the trade war started, that slumped to $16 billion. Now, if the Bloomberg report is true, it means China promised to buy more than twice as much in agricultural products as before the trade war started. That's absolutely huge. Hugely doubtful. Or as Forbes contributor Kenneth Raposa put it, there is no way China is importing $30 billion more in U.S. farm goods. That is, unless one of two things happen. One, China plans to ram food down the throats of its citizens, or two, China plans to build more silos to store grain which is already rotting in Chinese silos. In other words, there is simply not enough market demand in China for all that extra food. Get ready, kids, we're gonna do some math. This table shows China's agricultural imports from the U.S. The biggest U.S. import is oilseed crops, which is mostly soybeans. In 2017, China imported $13 billion worth from the U.S. So to make good on its promise to import $30 billion more, Chinese leaders would have to, say, force people to start eating 4 times as much American tofu, or wear 25 times as much animal hide, or some weird vegan carnivore combo of the two. But fundamentally, the problem is that there's not enough demand in the Chinese market for $30 billion more in U.S. agricultural products. So the only way for this to work is for China's central government to step in and control the market, which is the very type of economic interference that the U.S. is trying to get them to stop. Of course, there's a third option. Make a promise and then break it. According to economist Arlan Suderman, China will say what needs to be said to get a deal, suggesting that Chinese leaders will promise anything, no matter how unrealistic, just to buy a bit of time with no intention of actually following through. Already there's signs the Chinese side might not follow through on its end of whatever bargain gets made. On Monday, Chinese state-run media Xinhua suggested they might go back on the deal, saying that the emergence of new uncertainty cannot be ruled out. Uncertainty like Xi Jinping had his fingers crossed behind his back the whole time. Maybe that's why, according to multiple insiders, one of the key sticking points in the trade talks is a mechanism to force Chinese authorities to keep their word. Both Reuters and Associated Press reported that American officials have been pressing hard for a strong enforcement mechanism with penalties if the Chinese regime fails to keep its promises. I'm imagining the penalties will be things like China is grounded from trading for a month, or they're no longer allowed to go to trade prom. Okay, it will actually be something like the US will resume tariffs. And somehow, I don't think the Chinese side is going to be too enthusiastic about that one. That may be what US Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer was referring to when he told reporters at the White House that we have a few very, very big hurdles that we still have to face before the deal is sealed. After all, it wouldn't exactly be the first time the Chinese regime has overpromised and underdelivered. Look no further than all the promises they made when they joined the World Trade Organization in 2001. They're still not living up to their commitments, like respecting intellectual property, ending state subsidies in key exports, and opening up their markets fairly to foreign companies. So when you're dealing with a regime that's broken commitments on trade again and again for nearly 2 decades, do you really expect them to suddenly change? Perhaps that's why, after striking an optimistic note with Sunday's tweets, Trump sounded a bit more guarded on Monday when talking about signing the trade deal.
Well, that could happen fairly soon, or it might not happen at all, okay? Might not happen at all, but I think it's going to happen, and it could happen fairly soon.
So what do you think of the trade deal? Will the Chinese regime keep its word? Leave your comments below. And while you're still here, it's time for me to answer another question from a fan who supports China Uncensored with $1 or more per episode on the crowdfunding website Patreon. David Michael White asks, Matt, which part of Sun Tzu's Art of War has been the most helpful for your life so far? Question from my producer, Matt. Matt, what part of the Art of War has been most helpful in your life?
The section on using spies. Spies must be used to infiltrate any organization, even China Uncensored. Thanks for your question, David.
Thanks for watching China Uncensored. I'm Chris Chappell. See you next time.